Our next question is from Curious in Atlanta, Georgia.
I've been married for over 20 years. We have 6 kids. We have a great marriage. We're best friends and love spending time together. One thing that continues to happen is that I express that holidays are important to me, that just a small, not last minute, not expensive gesture is appreciated, a card, dinner. But almost every time the occasion is not celebrated, my birthday, our anniversary. He's a great guy. These things just do not hit his radar, even though I've calmly told him they are important. I don't understand how a person shelves all their expectations, especially after they've been expressed, and is not hurt after it happening repeatedly. Because to me, it's just pretending not to be hurt. I think it's not possible to walk through life without some expectation.
I would say that no one has said it's possible to walk through life without expectations. This is actually a call response. And Curious, thank you so much for your question. It's very heartfelt, and I can tell that you're struggling right now. I have a lot of compassion for that because I've certainly struggled with miscommunications, not just in my current relationship with Bex. Bex and I, we unpack that on her podcast, How to Love, about some of the miscommunications that we often have. And not fault finding, not blaming the other person, but trying to find the actual fault, the fault line that we have fallen into, so to speak. And so I think this is a response to, we did an episode about expectations with Matt Nathanson. And so Curious is calling because what she heard there, when I talk about expectations being a roadblock on the highway to happiness, what she heard was, hey, how can I shelve all of my expectations? That's not it at all. Just like there's a difference between asceticism and hedonism. Those are two sort of termini on the sort of consumption continuum. And minimalism is somewhere in the middle, right? Because as a minimalist, I'm not saying don't own anything. I'm not saying be an ascetic. I'm not saying abstain from all worldly pleasures. I mean, the ascetics, they took it really, really far back in the day. They would like sleep on broken glass and things to not just try to remove pleasure from their life, but to become comfortable with severe pain. Not saying that that is a great thing to do, right? Buddhism, they call the middle path, right? I would call minimalism the middle path for consumption, because it's not about living with nothing. And it's also not about embracing every hedonistic impulse. We do a segment, and we'll do it here later on the private podcast. We do the segment about checkout line wisdom, where the impulses that we often gravitate toward at a checkout line at a grocery store, a convenience store, or a department store, they try to pique our interest through impulse purchase, right? And these impulses are also roadblocks on the highway to happiness. And so, Curious, I'm not telling you that you should shelve all of your expectations. Rather, what I'm saying is, as soon as we begin to understand our expectations and how absurd many of our expectations are, when we start saying our expectations out loud, those expectations cease to have the same value that we once assigned to them. They don't have the same gravity, the same weight that they once had when they were just hanging out here in our mind. We're creating all these expectations, all these shoulds. TK should do this. Jordan No More should do this. My wife should do this. These are all expectations I've created. And as soon as I see how absurd most of my expectations are, I can let go of those expectations. Or even if they're still there, they don't carry nearly as much weight.
Perfectly said. I'll just add to that, Curious, you said, you've got this wonderful 20-year marriage, you've got 6 kids together, he's a great guy. That's what to focus on, right? Like, you clearly love and appreciate your husband. And I would assume he clearly loves and appreciates you. What are the ways in which he shows you that love and appreciation outside of the specific ways that you want him to show you that? Yeah. The card on the anniversary or the birthday item or, whatever the balls that you feel like he is dropping or the expectations that you have of him, acknowledging those special days are that he's not meeting. what are the other ways in which he shows you that he really does love you, right? For example, like Josh will frequently bring me coffee in bed. He's up early, brings me coffee in bed, wakes me up with a kiss and a cup of coffee. Not saying that's the the standard or anything, but that's just something to me that shows me that he's thinking about me, that shows me he loves me. What are the things that your husband does for you that are like that you can acknowledge and take pleasure in, instead of looking to the things that he's clearly not either able or willing, or some combination of the two, to meet your needs on the other front?
He doesn't care about those things as much as you do.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you think that he should care about those things. And so if we were doing an episode of How to Love right now, I would probably have a lot more tough love with respect to this question, because we often dish out or dole out some tough love on How to Love, because we experience tough love. And let me explain what I mean by that. If your expectation, Bex, was that I brought you coffee in bed every morning, it would not be the same sort of joy for me to provide that to you, because I would merely be meeting an expectation. I would be doing the bare minimum in order to pacify you, essentially.
Right.
And so, curious, one thing you might not realize that you're doing right now is you're asking in some way to be pacified a little bit. Here are my expectations, and if you meet them, then I will be what? What do you think is going to happen if he meets all of your expectations? I can tell you what will happen. If you have 100 expectations and he meets 99 of them, you're going to be discontented about the one that he does not meet. Or even worse, he meets all 100 of your expectations. What do you have then? You have absolute certainty. What do you get out of absolute certainty? You get boredom. You're going to make your relationship really, really boring if all you're doing is setting up these expectations for someone else to meet. And that's not just for your husband, by the way. That's any other relationship in your life. When we have all these expectations, if they are met 100%, now what do I have? Absolute certainty. That's what hell looks like.
Okay. So there are two aspects I see to creating a healthy and happy life. One aspect is learning how to live healthfully and happily when you can't get what you want. Because sometimes reality says no matter how bad you want it. And you got to have a philosophy for what am I going to do during those moments. But the second aspect is, how can I give myself the best chance possible to create the results that matter most to me? And I want to speak to that second part, because I do think that first part is important. I do think it's valuable for you to give your husband permission to be whoever and however he needs to be without giving that the power to ruin your day or your holiday. But one of the things you said was, I've said this over and over again. I've made this clear, and it's clear like that he doesn't hear or that he doesn't get it. This is a very common challenge in relationships, by the way. And one of the reasons this is a challenge is because when you talk to him about what matters to you, you're speaking from a place of conviction. And you rarely have to use your memory when you're speaking from that place. You're not following an externally imposed rule that someone gave to you. You're just speaking about what makes you feel joy. And you're asking him to remember that. Because he has different convictions than you, different interests than you, he's going to have to take that on as a kind of external rule to follow. Not necessarily legalistically, but it's something that he has to remember, right? And that means it's going to be harder for him to hang on to that automatically than it is for you. And so having to remind him, having to bring it up multiple times is something that it would be good to be prepared for, even if you are successful in the end. Just, I would adjust my expectation in that way.
Did you enjoy this standalone Patreon highlight? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalist Private Podcast, available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.